which is an entire copy, which is an entire Quran.
Okay, let's just
When is
agree
the
to
earliest-
disagree. We've
when
had
is
the
the-
discussion.
When is the earliest?
I'm going to run away.
When is
so,
the
okay.
earliest?
Islam.
When is the earliest complete? It's a long time ago.
No.
So, Nas, let me ask you a few questions.
What type of evidence?
Any historical evidence to ascertain?
Yes,
there
sorry,
was
I got a bit of a
idolatry-
cold.
No problem.
So
Idolatry in
from
the
the
middle of 7th century, when Mecca is supposed to have been when Muhammad is supposed to have ministered against idolaters.
So from the traditions, like from Sunni Shia sources.
Traditions. I mean, if you have Sira literature in mind, if you have Hadith literature in mind, they are very late sources. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about qualified historical resources, i.e., contemporary evidence, some sort of contemporary evidence, archaeological, for the existence of idolatry in Mecca in the 7th century.
So when it comes to idolatry in the Quran criticizes them. It's not so much the belief in Allah, but it's more so that they do not worship Allah alone.
But
So
my
they
question
associate
isn't-
partners.
My question isn't whether the Quran claims anything or not. The Quran is under scrutiny already. What is under scrutiny can't be a witness. My point is, do you have any archaeological evidence for idolatry having been in existence in and around in Arabia, Hijazi area, in the 7th century?
Yeah, so the type of worship which is criticized in Islam has to do with like supplication. So with that type of, you wouldn't necessarily expect there to be like archaeological type evidence. So the belief is in one God, but nonetheless they supplicate through either Mary or through saints or angels, and that is what is criticized or condemned in the Quran.
In Mecca, was there in Mecca?
It does seem like-
was there no idols?
So it does seem like there were Christians in Mecca and also Jews.
Yeah. Apart from them, were there pagan idols at all?
So from the traditional sources, it does mention that the Kaaba was filled with idols.
Yeah.
And the
So in
Quraysh.
other words, we would expect to find archaeological sources for them. Do we have any?
Not necessarily.
What do you mean? If they're filled with
if
idols,
the-
if idol worship was rampant across the Arabian Peninsula at that time, we should. Idols are archaeological artifacts.
yeah.
We should find them. Where are they? Do we know? Do we have we found any?
Yeah, so the archaeological evidence for us today, but in 7th century Arabia, once they embraced Islam, and since Islam is so anti-idol, the idols wouldn't have any use or meaning for them, so they would have been destroyed because they no longer worship the idols. So that would be my understanding in a nutshell.
Okay, all right, okay. So, but do you have any evidence for the pre-7th century existence of Mecca?
Any
Pre-7th century existence of Mecca as
For-
a city?
Did Sam mention Ptolemy
Yeah, he
from
mentions.
the 2nd century or something? He's a historian and he has a map of the Arabian Peninsula, and he mentions Mecca as Makraba.
Yeah, Makraba. Where does he place it?
So it's not like it's basically west coast,
Yeah, so west coast, but where? North or south?
middle west coast.
So you think Makraba that he refers to is the Mecca of today?
Yes.
So if there is
according
evidence-
to Neil Robertson, Neil Robertson from Leeds University, in his book Discovering the Quran, he interprets that to be a reference to Mecca. So I've got a code. So
No problem. So when in terms of
I'm just looking for the map. So
No, that's fine. That's fine. In terms of the inscriptions that we have
Okay.
very solid evidence today.
for monotheism, for monotheism pre-Islam.
We have. So you mentioned earlier when I asked about idols, you mentioned idols were destroyed, but remarkably, thousands of inscriptions have been found, rock inscriptions. Thousands have been found, many with references to idolatry. Many. So, in terms of idolatry, given that many have been found, you also find.
This
you
from
also-
like 6th century, you mean 6th or 5th century?
Yeah, essentially, essentially the first few centuries,
Oh, okay. Before Islam.
5-6 centuries pre-Islam.
Okay.
We have rock inscriptions, pre-Arabic, Nabatean script,
What does it say?
Proto-Arabic, Nabatean inscriptions, and what we
What
find
do the
is,
inscriptions say? Well,
what we find is for a couple of centuries before Islam is supposed to have arrived on the scene, there was no idolatry. We have evidence for that.
okay. So idolatry in Islam is not necessarily worshipping a statue. Can also be in
No, but you agreed earlier, Kaab in Mecca,
Yeah.
there was idolatry. And that
according
idolatry
to-
is classical idolatry with physical idols. So idolatry existed. So please don't talk about, essentially there was clear classical idolatry. But in the rock inscriptions, we find evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, so according to the traditional sources from like Sunni Shia sources, they make mention of the Kaaba being filled with statues.
But they are late
So
sources.
those
Late sources, very late sources. Which sources do you have in mind?
So you can say Ibn Ishaq, but
Very late source.
but Ibn Ishaq is not necessarily the first or earliest biography of the Prophet. There were other biographies as well, and Ibn Ishaq incorporates like pre-existing sources
What is the earliest evidence for Ibn Ishaq?
in manuscript form. I don't know from the top of my
Ibn
head.
Ishaq, we know Ibn Ishaq is by no means is an available artifact today. Ibn Ishaq isn't even available. So please, I want early sources. I
What
don't
do you
want
mean
late.
Ibn Hisham's not available?
Well, in terms of manuscriptal evidence for what we're talking about, we don't have these things. So what I'm asking is very simply, please use
But if we're going to
early
be
evidence.
consistent, I don't have a
Nas,
problem with them
early
being.
evidence.
I accept late sources that are based upon pre-existing material. So I accept
use late source.
the Old Testament,
use
for
late
example.
What's that?
So like the Old Testament, like the book of Genesis, I accept Genesis, even though the manuscripts are like more than 1300 years after Moses.
No, the
So do you mean like the Dead Sea Scrolls?
if you want to have a debate on this as to why the Old Testament is credible, I can get into this.
No, I'm not debating the authenticity of the Bible. I'm just saying
because you're making
we have to have same standards.
No. You're making a
So
false
Ibn
equivalence.
Ishaq is a couple of hundred
You're
years.
talking about a false equivalence.
But Genesis is like more than 1,000 years.
Israel as a nation was a nation which experienced signs and wonders over a prolonged period of time. In Islam, you don't have it.
How
So
do you make
can't-
sense of
can't-
Genesis?
You can't compare them both.
Which is Genesis is authored by Moses, but the earliest manuscripts for Genesis, I believe, is from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
But are you listening to what I'm saying? You're not listening to what I'm saying.
You're
If you
speaking
want
about the Old Testament as a whole rather than Genesis specifically.
what I am saying is the biblical narrative, the biblical case, the way in which we approach the biblical case is very different. Because in the case of the biblical community, they were a people group who saw signs and wonders
Okay.
over a prolonged period of time, including even in the time of Jesus Christ.
I see.
Signs and wonders. You don't have this with Islam. When you don't have this with Islam, you can't just make things up as you
So
go along.
what are the documentary evidence for the signs and wonders that the Israelites witnessed?
Okay, let's start here. For the Bible, let's start with Jesus Christ. Do you agree Jesus performed signs and wonders?
From the Quran, yeah.
But
My belief in the Quran, yeah.
The Quran is under scrutiny. You haven't provided any evidence for the Quran yet.
So is the Bible under scrutiny as well?
Absolutely. The
But we
Bible
can
can
still
be-
accept,
the
we can
Bible-
still use the Bible.
No,
So we can still use
not-
the Quran
not-
as well.
Not while its veracity hasn't been established. While it is treated as a doubtful literature,
Who
you
doubts the
can't use
Quran
it.
who doubts the Quran as a contemporary text from the time of the Prophet?
So, who doubts the Quran? What?
Yeah, as a contemporary literature from the time of the Prophet or from the 7th century.
We have all sorts of problems with the Quranic history. Also, do we
According
have
to
any?
Sidki.
Do we have any manuscripts for? Do we have any of the Uthmanic manuscripts available today?
According to Sidki, we may have either 99% or 100% manuscripts from the 7th century or from the first 100
Let me ask you
years.
this question again because you're not addressing my question. Do we have any of the Uthmanic mushafs today?
So the Birmingham manuscripts, for example, is identified with either coming from Usman's time or predating Usman.
But do we have any of the Uthmanic manuscripts today?
So I mentioned the Birmingham manuscripts,
So you claim
and also
Birmingham-
possibly the Sana as well.
So you claim Birmingham manuscript is Uthmanic manuscript?
It's from his time.
I'm not asking that. This is why you are evading my question. My question in specific is Uthmanic manuscripts, the standardized manuscripts that Uthman produced, Uthman ordered to be produced, which were produced according to Islamic tradition. Do we have any evidence for them today?
So I'm not the best person to ask. You can
But
always.
you are reasonable. I mean, if you can't answer
Yeah.
this question, no one can. No Muslim can.
Well,
Do
there's
we have any
Mansoor.
Uthmanic?
You can ask
In your
Mansoor.
knowledge,
He
in your
does.
knowledge, is there any Uthmanic?
I believe
mushaf
there
today?
is. If you go to the Islamic Awareness website.
But which one is
The
Uthmanic
document.
mushaf today?
Yes, if you go to the Islamic-Awareness,
I've gone through. I don't think they talk.
they
about
have a list of
Uthmanic
Quranic manuscripts.
No. I've gone through the entire list.
I mean,
they don't
we can
talk about.
we can
they
maybe
don't-
look at it.
Please find out, please, and tell me which one is the Uthmanic. Which ones are Uthmanic manuscripts?
Okay. Yeah, so they've identified, for example, from Top Copy Istanbul
Top copy is Uthmanic manuscript.
or from Samarkand.
Top copy and Samarkand are Uthmanic mushafs is what they are claiming. Where are they claiming that? Where are they claiming
They
that?
also have the Istanbul again.
Where are they claiming that? I don't see the claim. Where are they claiming that?
Yes, I beg your pardon. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
They say. Sorry, I had it here. Sorry, I had it before. But yeah, basically they're not making the claim. So,
No one
yeah.
is. I went through
for
the
for this
entire thing.
specific Istanbul.
No one is making this claim. This idea of Uthmanic mushafs.
But there are manuscripts that are identified from the time of Usman, or if not even earlier than
What is the
Usman,
no, this is not true. Nas, you're making
like the
things up as you go along.
like the Birmingham manuscripts.
No. Please, you're making things up as you go along. Please don't do that. No manuscript today is credibly identified as Uthmanic mushaf.
So how many manuscripts do we have from the time of the disciples of Jesus?
Let's go to that later.
The
I'm
Gospel
talking
of
about the Quran.
Matthew.
I'm talking about the Quran right now.
Yeah, but we have to be fair, isn't it?
No,
we can't,
I'll
just
come
choose
I'll
double
come to the Bible
standards.
in a little bit.
So do we have any first century manuscripts of Matthew or John's Gospel?
You understand, Nas, you should very well understand the context we are talking. You're comparing apples with oranges. You would understand this.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Islamic
Hence why
land,
you don't want to discuss
Islamic
the Bible.
Hijazi land, Nas, Hijazi land, Mecca and so on. Hijazi land hasn't been Nas. Hijazi land hasn't been taken over continually from the time of Muhammad. Hasn't
Is
been
that the
taken over.
excuse that you don't have
No,
manuscripts
it's not.
from the time of Matthew?
We are talking about the Quran right now. Uthmanic Musaf don't exist. Do we agree on this?
I disagree. I just need to do
So-
more. I need to read more of Islamic
Okay,
awareness.
that's fine.
so,
You
yeah.
please do more.
But
why-
even
while
then,
you
I
do-
don't have a problem because we have first
But
century
while you do
manuscripts
more,
of Quran.
while you do more, don't disagree already. Don't do. Because when you have to do research, don't make the claim already. So Uthmanic Musafs don't exist. Number one. Number two. Let me come to this, please. Do we have any of the early manuscripts complete? Quranic manuscripts complete? When is the earliest complete Quranic manuscript?
I don't know from the top of my hand, but we have first century manuscripts which are either 99% or 100%.
Which one is that?
So like the Birmingham manuscript is from the first century.
Birmingham manuscript is 99%?
No, I said the manuscripts altogether from the first century make
about-
up the Quran.
Is there a single manuscript which is an entire copy, which is an entire Quran?
Okay, let's just
When is
agree
the
to
earliest-
disagree. We've
when
had
is
the discussion.
When is the earliest?
I'm gonna run away,
When is
so,
the
okay.
earliest?
Islam.
When is the earliest complete?
Thanks. Yeah. I was waiting for someone to call me, so yeah.
Is that yours?
No, it's the brothers. It's fine. We ended it. I didn't want to talk to him anyway. So. I was trying to avoid him, but he's following me around.